These are the moments when Iran thought they could outmaneuver the United States Navy, only to discover they'd gravely miscalculated. From swarm tactics in the Persian Gulf to precision strikes on nuclear facilities, the Iran-US naval confrontation has become one of the most dangerous maritime rivalries of our time. The story begins in the narrow waters of the Persian Gulf, where Iran built an entirely different kind of naval force. While other nations invest billions in massive aircraft carriers and destroyers, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates between 3,000 and 5,000 small, fast attack craft. These aren't typical naval vessels, they're speedboats designed for one purpose: to overwhelm larger ships through sheer numbers and speed. Major General Hossein Salami, the IRGC's chief commander, has boasted about their capabilities. Their speed climbed from 55 knots to 75 and 90 knots, with the next stage reaching 110 knots. That's faster than most military helicopters can fly, but speed was only part of Iran's strategy. The Iranians called it smart control, a doctrine built around drones, electronic warfare, and precision-guided missiles rather than traditional naval power. It was asymmetric warfare at its finest, where smaller, high-tech assets challenge conventionally superior forces. This same doctrine that Iran developed is being tested today in the Red Sea, where Houthi forces use similar swarm boat tactics against commercial shipping. And for a while, it seemed to work. In 2002, during a U.S. military exercise called Millennium Challenge, retired General Paul Van Riper demonstrated just how devastating these tactics could be. Playing the role of an Iranian-style adversary, he coordinated swarms of small boats and cruise missiles without using radio traffic that could be intercepted. In minutes, he'd theoretically sunk 16 major U.S. warships, including an aircraft carrier. The attack was so successful that U.S. planners had to pause the exercise and respawn the fleet to continue training. But Iran's confidence in these tactics was about to be tested in the real world. April 14, 1988, the USS Samuel B. Roberts, a guided missile frigate, was escorting Kuwaiti tankers through the Persian Gulf during Operation Earnest Will when disaster struck. An Iranian mine, costing just $1,500, tore a 15-foot hole in the ship's hull, flooded the engine room, and broke the keel. Such structural damage is almost always fatal to a vessel. Commander Paul Rinn watched his ship take on nearly half its displacement in water in just 90 seconds. The Roberts was held together only by its main deck, but what happened next shocked the Iranians who'd laid that mine. Instead of sinking, the crew fought fire and flooding for 5 hours. They cinched cables around the cracked superstructure and refused to let their ship die. When Iranian boats approached to investigate, Commander Rinn made a decision that would echo through naval history. "I think they were coming to finish us off, and I wanted them to know that they weren't going to do that today." The Roberts survived, but America's response was swift and overwhelming. 4 days later, Operation Praying Mantis began, the largest U.S. surface naval battle since World War II. Admiral William Crowe personally called Rear Admiral Anthony Less with specific instructions: sink the Iranian frigate Sabalan. By the end of the day, Iran had lost 2 major warships, several smaller craft, and 2 oil platforms. The $1,500 mine had cost Iran millions in lost vessels and infrastructure. Months later, the USS Vincennes accidentally shot down Iran Air Flight 655, killing 290 civilians, an event that still fuels Iranian grievances against America today. But Iran didn't abandon its asymmetric strategy. Instead, they doubled down, developing increasingly sophisticated weapon systems. They reverse-engineered Chinese YJ-83 anti-ship missiles, creating the Noor and Gator missile families with a 136-mile range and speeds of Mach 1.4. They claimed to have built cruise missiles with 630-mile ranges that could change targets mid-flight. These same small boat tactics had already proven deadly against U.S. forces. 17 sailors died when Al-Qaeda bombed the USS Cole in 2000 using an explosive-laden speedboat. The game-changer came in their missile technology. Iran developed weapons specifically designed to exploit what they saw as American vulnerabilities. A single well-placed missile could theoretically disable a billion-dollar warship, creating a cost-benefit ratio that heavily favored the attacker. For years, this remained largely theoretical. Then came 2019, when Iran shot down a U.S. Global Hawk surveillance drone worth $200 million. The massive drone, looking like a flying whale, was destroyed by a surface-to-air missile that cost a fraction of its value. Iran had proven they could hit high-value American assets, but they weren't prepared for what the U.S. Navy had been developing in secret. The Aegis ballistic missile defense system had been quietly revolutionizing naval warfare. While Iran focused on overwhelming U.S. ships with numbers, American engineers were perfecting something that seemed impossible: intercepting ballistic missiles with other missiles. The Standard Missile-3 used hit-to-kill technology, destroying targets with the force of a 10-ton truck traveling 600 miles per hour with no explosive warhead needed. April 13, 2024. Iran launched its largest attack ever against Israel, over 300 missiles and drones, including 120 ballistic missiles. This wasn't just an attack on Israel, it was a test of everything Iran had learned about overwhelming missile defenses. They were about to discover that the rules of naval warfare had changed. U.S. Navy destroyers, USS Arleigh Burke and USS Carney, fired Standard Missile-3 interceptors in combat for the first time, working alongside Israeli Iron Dome and David's Sling systems. Missile analyst Chris Carlson had noted, "Until you use it in combat, there are always questions." Those questions were answered that night. The interceptors performed flawlessly, shooting down Iranian ballistic missiles in mid-flight with precision that seemed almost impossible. Iran tried again in October 2024, launching over 200 missiles at Israel. This time, USS Cole and USS Bulkley fired a dozen interceptors, again achieving successful intercepts. Iran's strategy of overwhelming defenses with numbers was being systematically dismantled by technology they hadn't anticipated. But the most shocking moment came in June 2025, during Operation Midnight Hammer. Iran had pushed too far, and President Trump authorized strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. 7 B-2 Spirit bombers operating from halfway around the world delivered 75 precision-guided weapons, including 14 massive ordnance penetrators, 30,000-pound bombs designed to destroy the deepest underground bunkers. General Dan Kane called it the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history. But what stunned Iranian military leaders was the complete absence of resistance. Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that its surface-to-air missile systems did not see us, Kane reported. The stealth technology Iran thought they understood had evolved beyond their ability to counter. President Trump's assessment was characteristically direct. "There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago." A Pentagon assessment found that Iran's nuclear program had been set back approximately 2 years. The precision of the strikes, the complete penetration of Iranian air defenses, and the surgical destruction of deeply buried facilities demonstrated capabilities that Iran's asymmetric strategy couldn't address. Iran's response revealed the limitations of their approach. They fired missiles at the Al Udeid air base in Qatar, but Qatari forces intercepted the attack. Their swarm boats, fast missiles, and numerical advantages meant nothing against enemies they couldn't reach or systems they couldn't penetrate. The final insult came in February 2026. An F-35C from the USS Abraham Lincoln shot down an Iranian Shahed 139 drone that had aggressively approached the carrier. The drone, part of Iran's vaunted surveillance network, was destroyed before it could gather meaningful intelligence. Hours later, IRGC boats attempted to harass a US-flagged merchant vessel in the Strait of Hormuz, a traditional show of force that now seemed almost quaint. Rear Admiral Tangsiri still insists that Iran maintains total 24-hour intelligence surveillance over the Strait of Hormuz, describing Iran's islands as impregnable fortresses. But the reality has fundamentally shifted. Iran's speedboats, once feared for their swarm capabilities, now face laser weapon systems like Helios that cost pennies to fire and provide near-infinite ammunition. Their missiles encounter defense systems that can intercept bullets with bullets. The Iran-US naval confrontation continues, but the balance has shifted dramatically. Iran bet everything on asymmetric warfare, believing they could level the playing field through clever tactics and cost-effective weapons. They discovered that American naval technology had evolved beyond their ability to counter, turning their greatest strengths into manageable problems. Today, as Iran continues military exercises in the Strait of Hormuz with names like Smart Control, the question isn't whether they can challenge US naval supremacy. It's whether their entire strategic doctrine has become obsolete in the face of technologies they never saw coming.